discovery for me. And Corbucci, I was very limited in what I...
Yeah, I think you've seen Django and you've seen El Grande Silencio.
And at that time, back in archives, it was Django. Django was the movie I had seen. So.
Yeah, so it was especially gratifying for me because I was hoping you would respond as well as you did, and as well as much as I do, and you did even beyond what I thought you were going to respond to.
Corbucci is a very special kind of filmmaker who speaks really to me because of his unapologetic nature, and he doesn't apologize at all for his characters.
Yeah, but I mean, what really knocked me out was just how, I've always just said, he's one of the greatest Western directors who ever lived. He's one of the great action filmmakers who ever lived. He's at the tip top of the action filmmaking game, which I actually think is the most cinematic game a director can do, all right, is to be a master of cinema action.
Absolutely. And in fact, it's not even his action that was so, I mean, his action is absolutely impressive, but he impresses even on, just mundane moments. It just felt like he was in his element and he's with his crew. His crew has a shorthand with him. They're doing things that are subliminal to us.
The effortlessness of the mastery involved in some of those sequences. You don't get that good until you've made 30 movies.
Yeah. That's true.
When you've made 30 movies and you know what you're doing there, now it's just kind of coming off, like sparks coming off your fingers, you know? And I think really the only director now that can compare in that regards of having done so many movies and that effortlessness is at the fingertips is Spielberg.
Yeah. I was just going to say Spielberg
That's it. But there's not an effortlessness to Scorsese's work. There's effort involved, and that's what makes it good.
You feel as though even on a movie of Spielberg's that I don't like, a terrible movie by him is still a perfectly made movie.
Yeah, exactly. The one we're talking about of Corbucci's today is Sonny and Jed, starring Thomas Millian, Susan George, and a fantastic Telly Savalas.
Yeah.
A quick rundown on Sergio Corbucci, as he's described in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where Rick Dalton goes to Italy to make Nebraska Jim starring him. He goes, well, who's Sergio Corbucci? He goes, he's the second greatest director of spaghetti westerns in the whole wide world. He was the most prolific of the great spaghetti western directors. And him and Leone started out together. They both started out as critics together. The way people romanticize the French New Wave starting off as critics. Well, the Italian genre filmmakers, all of them, Duccio Tessari, Franco Giraldi, Sergio Corbucci, Sergio Leone, all started off as film critics.
Yeah, he was like a critic for Stars and Stripes, wasn't he?
I don't know. I don't know where he wrote. I don't know where
for a while. Just in post-war, he like as a young man, he was at a film journal. And I think that all went to shit during the war.
Yeah,
And then afterwards, he signed up for Stars and Stripes. And became their film critic, which is fascinating.
So he actually wrote reviews in English?
I presume so.
Yeah. Or wrote them in Italian, then maybe they got translated.
I haven't read a single review out of Stars and Stripes ever in my life, but I can imagine that if he was writing it, it must have been in English.
And then he went from being a film critic to being a very popular screenwriter. And then he became, along with Leone, one of the great second unit action directors. And they both got their shot at directing on their own because they both worked as second unit directors on one of the huge peplums, The Last Days of Pompeii. That movie became such a smash hit, but then it became very obvious that the things that made it such a smash hit were the action scenes directed by both Leone and Corbucci, that got them their first gigs on their own. And was actually...
God, that sounds like a great film to watch.
Yeah, I know. With Corbucci and Leone, you're doing all the good shit in it, you know? And then people try to give them credit for it. And then both Leone and Corbucci, no. The director of that movie was the director of that movie. I mean, look, we did the action scenes. That was our fucking job. All right. But he deserves the credit for the movie. It's his movie. I wouldn't have done that movie exactly that way, but I did the action scenes that way. But it was just such a smash hit that, everybody involved with that movie just, reaped the benefits.
They all elevated. Yeah.
They all elevated from it. Corbucci didn't necessarily do the giant canvas epics that Leone specialized in, doing more down and dirty revenge stories, down and dirty cowboy pictures. But interestingly enough, his first film I believe it's his first film as a director, well, at least the first film coming off of the success of Last Days of Pompeii, is actually his biggest epic, is Duel of the Titans, which is maybe the best done epic of the peplums. And I'm not a big fan of the peplums.
Describe for our audience what a peplum.
Okay, peplum is it's the genre in Italy that took off after the magnificent success of Steve Reeve's film Hercules.
Yeah.
A series of Roman set adventure films, usually starring muscle men.
Yeah, sword and sandals.
Sword and sandal, they're also known as sword and sandal movies. Peplum is a more, prestigious way of saying
of course.
it. Yeah. But it's crazy how popular that genre became. And they predate the spaghetti westerns, and pretty much almost all the directors of spaghetti westerns all came from the peplums.
Yeah.
So they came from the peplums and moved over into spaghetti westerns, and then they moved over into giallos, and they moved over into poliziers and mafia movies.
Whatever fad was going on in the movies.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things about Corbucci, when he started doing spaghetti westerns, is part of the thing that what makes the great Western directors great is they forge their own version of the West. Anthony Mann's version of the West was not Howard Hawks, and it was not John Ford. And in the case of Sergio Corbucci, there is nobody who specialized in doing Westerns that committed to as surreal, as cynical, and as surrealistically violent a West as the Westerns of Sergio Corbucci.
Yeah, if Ken Russell had made a Western, he might be in contention.
I think you might be right.
But he didn't, and so he's not.
And and he would have to have made 4 of them.
It takes an outsider to understand America. You have to be on the outside of it to really look at it. That's why, A River Runs Through It, shot by a Frenchman, views the American landscape in a way that an American DP might not see it the same way. He might not, be able to see it the same way because he's too far on the inside. And these Italians making, their thesis on America, and these guys who grew up, during war under fascism.
Oh yeah.
And
that's an important part of it.
It's a massively important part.
It's one of the most important parts about Corbucci's entire oeuvre was growing up under fascism.
And so, he's viewing all of this, and then they're also making these examinations of America. And in doing so, they're looking more, I think, at what human nature was like during what we can call the mud flood period, which, America is this, in Corbucci's mind, this mud covered and the mud is almost symbolic. I've never seen more mud in a Western than under Corbucci's watch.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, I mean, the muddy streets in Django are just a fucking revelation. I mean, it's just a revelation of dirt and grime and just of atmosphere. I mean, it's just one of the greatest Western sets of all time. Apparently, he almost destroyed that studio. That studio was never able to get the mud.
one of my notes was, it takes an outsider to observe as viciously and honestly as Corbucci does in his thesis on America in the late 1800s. He correctly observes that unregulated human behavior is both a product of and responsible for the rape, murder, theft, pedophilia, graft, corruption, and a veritable cornucopia of cretinous constitutionals that built this country to become the glory that it is today.
That's very well said. And the last piece I'll make about Corbucci before we get into this movie straight up, Corbucci was less interested in the concept of a hero leading his stories than any Western director ever. I would even throw a Peckinpah in that, because it's obvious Peckinpah considers Pat Garrett a hero.
Yeah.
All right. And Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid to some degree or another. And he definitely considers the bastards in the Wild Bunch heroic for sacrificing their lives to save Angel. And I agree too. I think they are too. But in Corbucci's case, after he did Minnesota Clay with Cameron Mitchell, that was the last of his heroic Westerns except for one standalone one, which is Les Specialistes with Johnny Hallyday. You cannot call the leads, the protagonists of Corbucci movies as heroic. They're not heroic. The best you can say about them is they're avengers. They usually have a blood-soaked revenge in their mind that they're trying to quench the thirst of. But there's nothing heroic about them. And
He defies the heroism.
They defy heroism. But the thing that's also important about them is, as opposed to most Western directors, where it's their heroic figure that kind of sets the tale, that sets the landscape of the West that they're going to be betrayed in, that's not the case in Corbucci. It is his villains. It is his villains that rule the show. It is his villains that set the pace. None of the other archetypes that show up in the movie, whether it be civilization in regards to the towns, the town people that are represented in the movie, which represents civilization, which he thinks is a cesspool. Mm-hmm. They pretty much deserve almost everything they get.
Yeah.
And then there's the bandito characters that they're actually obviously Corbucci's favorite of the characters, mm-hmm. the ones that lives outside the law, the ugly characters of the good and the bad. They're all versions of Tuco.
Yeah.
But nobody can fulfill their archetypal function except in contrast to the villain. And the villains represent fascism. They represent fascism in every way. They're either representing the Nazi Party, they're representing Mussolini's brown shirts, they're representing the Manson family. But part of the point of that is the idea that it's only the supreme evil of the villains that can even cast the lead protagonist as anything close to a hero.
Yeah.
Only by their hatred of the fascistic villains do they have a heroic patina about them. And in another movie, they would be the bad guys.
Yeah.
Sonny and Jed, they changed the West a little, and each other a lot.
I declare you man and wife from now till death when you are parted.
Yes, Western. The last official Western he would do is a comedy called The Red, the Black, and the Yellow. And it's I don't like a lot of Italian comedies, and I don't think it's very funny. It's also unique because it definitely takes place in the 70s. It does not have the same feel of his late 60s movies. I mean, they cuss, they say fuck a lot. It seems to throw away the cowboy dialect, all right, at some point. So it just sounds like a modern movie.
Yeah, completely, especially with Telly Savalas. I mean, he takes the lead in that.
He definitely takes
almost has a lollipop in his mouth as he's walking through this.
Sonny and Jet is more or less Corbucci's attempt to do a Bonnie and Clyde, and set it out west. However, while it does have definitely Bonnie and Clyde like vibes, to me, the way it plays is closer to Charlie Manson and Squeaky Fromm out west, where he looks almost exactly like Charles Manson. She looks almost exactly like Squeaky Fromm. I mean, to a startling degree. Now, I'm going to read the back of the box. Now, the thing is, the movie we watched is a beautiful Japanese tape that I picked up that had Japanese subtitles. That I picked up Letterboxd, which was unheard of. And I picked this up in the 90s, when I was like doing a publicity tour in Japan.
Unheard of, but not in Japan. In Japan, they were very...
And this box is one of the just best boxes I have. Now, at Archives, we had a piece of shit.
Super light tape. Almost like helium film tape.
You look at it. It's definitely done in the 6-hour mode with a gigantic wheel.
That was originally like a tape for a few trailers.
Exactly. This was literally a tape for like
a 20-minute trailer. That's my reel.
How to operate your VCR tape. All right, an entire feature film was put on it in the maybe the 9-hour mode, and a truly terrible pan and scan where I actually tried to watch this tape at Archive, not in Archive, but when we had it at Archives, and I turned it off because I knew what I was watching was such
a destruction of
destruction of the movie that I this looks really good. I can't watch it this
with the beautiful widescreen photography that's going on here, and all of the work done by Louis Quadrati, the DP, is just so stunning that it's a good transfer.
Okay, but also as I read the back of this box.
And you're going to read the back of the Archives.
Yeah, I'm going to read the back. Well, let's see. Well, I can't read the back of the Japanese one.
Yeah.
All right.
You could try.
No, I can't.
Gala might be able to read the back of the Japanese box.
But the back of the Archives box, again, understand, the tape company has no idea who Thomas Milian is, but it definitely knows who Telly Savalas is. So it will be an skewed version of the story. All right. So Sonny and Jed, starring Telly Savalas and Susan George. Rough, tough, and fast-paced Western action. Susan George is a naive young girl determined to become an outlaw. She joins forces with the West's most famous gunslinger, No name, no nothing, all right? Assuming he's Jed. Telly Savalas stars as the ruthless man who is equally determined to bring them both in, dead or alive. The fast and furious turn of events that follow is Western action at its best. But what I really like is the tagline on the front of the thing. Tough, gritty, and real. This is a must-see movie. Well, that's true.
But you know what? It's tough. It's gritty. And I think it is real. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's more real than any other take, because what he's doing is he's looking at human behavior, and he's looking at the extremities of human behavior. It's exactly what Ken Russell does. And it's why I love Ken Russell so much.
Mm-hmm. One of the points I was making earlier in talking about Corbucci's career overall was his desire to diminish the role of the hero. To the point that by the time he gets to El Grande Silencio, he just removes the hero's voice and makes him a mute, basically reducing him to a costume.
Yeah.
The film is a better description than the back of the box would be. Thomas Milian plays a filthy outlaw character named Jed Trigado. He meets this character who ends up helping him out, Sonny, who's this young girl played by Susan George. Now, Susan George, I think, was probably about 26 or 27 at the time. But it's pretty obvious that Sonny in the movie is supposed to be a young girl. You get the impression she's like 15 or 16. That kind of, it seems like the point.
It's also worth noting that at the very, very beginning, everyone thinks she's a young boy.
Yeah. Even Jed, when he first meets her, thinks she's a boy.
Yeah, everybody thinks she's a boy, just a dirty-faced,
the
boy.
People in the town know better because they're like, oh, maybe that young girl, that girl, the gravedigger's daughter that dresses like a boy all the time, she tried to rob the stagecoach.
Yeah, exactly.
So Jed takes her along, but treats her like shit, like a serf, basically.
Like a dog.
Yeah, like a dog.
He actually says, like a dog. You're a virgin, you're a woman, you're no better than a dog.
Yeah. You watch the movie, and you don't like Jed at all. I mean,
that's the amazing challenge that Corbucci is presenting to us. He's unapologetically putting this character who is unsavory in every way to all of our sensibilities that civilization has taught us.
I absolutely agree. And one of the things
from the way he eats, from the way he molests her, from the way he treats other people, everything about him is unsavory, and yet
everything is unsavory, and it's a constant challenge because just by sheer virtue of Thomas Milian's Jed Trigado being the protagonist, we kind of want to like him even though we don't. And then they give you a couple of instances where maybe we can start liking him and maybe he has changed. And then just the moment we start feeling that, he does something completely contrary to that makes us dislike him again. I mean, it's one of the, I am all about directors and screenwriters that challenge their audience. And I'm not in I didn't like that character. Well, fuck you. You're not supposed to like every fucking character. You got to like everybody. All right. It's a fucking movie. All right. Challenge yourself. And it's a constant challenge. It's a constant almost affront to the audience of what they will sit for and what they can stand.
Well, the thing is, his character is reprehensible in our world.
Yeah.
But in this world that Corbucci creates, by contrast to the corruption and graft of the good elements in that world, he's actually a neutral character in some ways. This is the Old West.
Yeah,
this is how Corbucci views the American West, but a savage place.
And I will have to say that this was my second time seeing the movie. The first time I watched it, I liked the movie. I loved two sequences, which I think are two of Corbucci's greatest action sequences ever, like the opening 10 minutes and then the scene in the corn barn.
That corn barn action sequence and that crazy,
it's fucking incredible.
That's done. And hearing you mention that he was a second unit action director, I mean, it shows. It's mind-blowing how good it is. Yeah. It's actually kind of beautiful.
It is.
The way that he's hiding in grain under all this corn.
Yeah.
And a lantern or something, an oil lantern.
No. Telly Savalas literally makes a Molotov cocktail.
It's a Molotov cocktail, of course. Of course, it's a Molotov cocktail.
They're looking for Jed and Sonny by sticking pitchforks in the corn, trying to. They know he's hiding there. They go, no, stop.
Yeah, let's have some fun. Let's make some popcorn.
No, stop. You gotta cook a pig before you stick a fork in it.
Yeah. And he says it like he's like, in Jersey.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Saying it. But the way that fire spreads.
Oh, it's just amazing.
And the chaos in the room.
And the chaos that happens afterwards.
And the horse, her on the horse, like getting downed inside.
Yeah.
It's a breathtaking sequence.
But I was turned off by Jed's loathsomeness. And so I always considered this a half successful Corbucci film. And consequently, I haven't seen it for many, many years, and since the 90s when I bought this in Japan. So I watched it a second time with you, and I have a different feeling about it. I love it. I think I can't imagine a better Western for him to end his Western career on. I think this is as powerful a movie as you're going to see. And it is not just those two sequences. Every fucking scene in it is terrific. And then the things that frustrated me before, they still frustrate me now, but now I'm enjoying being antagonized. Now I'm enjoying the frustration. I'm enjoying the challenge that he's throwing down. And the fact and the thing that is unrefutable is the fact that as a performer, Thomas Millian does not give a fuck if the audience likes him or not. He does not give a fuck if the audience... He gives
less of a fuck than Corbucci.
He gives less than a fuck than Corbucci. He just doesn't give a shit. He is not doing anything for the audience. He's doing it to the audience.
He's challenging the audience.
And Corbucci is coming from the same fucking place. He is not trying to make Jed Dragato likable for you.
I made a note that... I've often been accused of populating my films with unlikable characters, and I've always gotten trashed over that. But Corbucci makes me feel fine ignoring those criticisms. Like Ken Russell, a favorite pleasure of mine, Corbucci is unapologetic for his characters and probably also, like Russell, takes great glee in offending the sensibilities of his audience. Mm-hmm. And that is the point. He is trying to take them from a somnambulist state, and he's figuring they have to be woken, and he's fine to be the guy to wake them. Mm-hmm. He just starts, and it is a form of the kind of Antonin Artaud theater of cruelty, where the audience needs to be woken up through violence, through noise, through getting slapped in the face, not literally, but through things that they're not used to seeing.
The theater of cruelty, right?
Yeah, the theater of cruelty is the concept behind it. And Antonin Artaud's, and he was sort of a surrealist, but his whole theory was that...
Well, it's a slicing of the eyeball in Illusion Dog. Yeah.
The audience is asleep, mostly because they've been, just programmed by many movies.
If that was ever truer than now, that was then.
Yeah.
That's just the way it's been since the 2000s.
Yeah.
The audience is fucking asleep.
I mean, we have a movie where a guy basically starts raping, I think, who he thinks is a little boy.
No. He realizes she's a girl. That's why he's like, oh my God, you're a girl. All right. Oh, well, I'll show you what I do to women.
Yeah, what I do to women. And then he's like, and then he realizes, as he's trying to enter her, you're a virgin.
Yeah, exactly. And you know why he realizes she's a virgin is her vagina's too tight.
Yeah.
He can't get it in.
Yeah, he can't. And so he's like, I hate virgins. I mean,
the only reason he doesn't fuck her is because she's a virgin, because he can't.
How can anyone ever come to like a character like that and root for a character like that? And that's the thought experiment that Corbucci wants to go on.
Yes. And I did not root for him. In the first time I watched it, I did not root for him. I ended up coming up with a secondary reading of the movie. But watching it now, many years later, watching it with you the other day, I was rooting for Sonny and Jed by the end. By the end, I was. With all of Jed's problems, I was on their side. And I wanted them to be together.
Yeah, I did too. Weirdly enough, I did. Well, they're
if they actually get,
they're misfits,
because
and
if
they
actually
together.
get together, that means Sonny wins.
Yeah, and
that's important because, even though we're ambiguous about how we feel, or not ambiguous about how we feel about Jed, we are not ambiguous about Sonny. We are completely on Sonny's side.
Yeah,
she's not a hero. She's a weird victim / almost sort of villain.
She's a little bit of a misfit.
Yeah.
She's a little bit of a misfit.
That's normal for Corbucci's characters because
her father's dead. He's the gravedigger. She's got no future. And
his male characters are all set up as specific archetypes, but his female characters usually border two of the archetypes together, like victim and villain or victim and hero. They're always...
Well, like Squeaky Fromme, she may have a little Stockholm syndrome. I mean, his abuse of her is one of the things that, she somehow overcomes, and because he's also a great protector. You know, he's a violent character, but in the end, when like shit is happening to her, he doesn't even want to get involved. But in the end, his better nature eventually takes over.
Well, it does also talk about our own, as a viewer, genre film viewer, our phantom limb syndrome, that when we're not given a hero to respond to, we want to respond anyway. So we almost have a phantom limb pulsating. Like, for instance, he treats her so shitty in the whole first 45 minutes. But in that scene where she ends up killing that guy and saving him, and he get, hey, well done, snot nose, you actually feel good. You actually, it has an effect on you. That's what I mean about the phantom limb syndrome. You know, you're happy that she's finally distinguished herself in his eyes, and you're proud of her.
It's almost done as a throwaway gesture in the middle of a conversation. Yeah. Like, you know, it's almost secondary. It's meant to be in the peripheral of your vision. And he's such a master that he just elegant, like watching a dance move. And it's like watching a ballet move in the middle of a jitterbug, in the middle of a dialogue sequence.
And even the ambiguousness that we're supposed to feel towards Jed is sustained through the entire movie until the last scene. All right. Yeah. It's the last scene where Jed finally says the kind of things you want Jed to say, where Sonny has the upper hand. It's not until the last scene, but they get just perfect for Jed. The last line of the film is Jed yelling to Sonny, "I love you, you motherfucker." Yeah. That's the last line of the movie.
It was funny, all the kind of "fuck you," like the weird kind of 1970s vulgar language brought into the Old West was.
It's really funny.
Also, I started noticing these tiny lens flares occurring.
Oh my God, that was amazing when you pointed that out.
In the corner of frame. Yeah. And I started noticing when they were playing and what was happening. And the way this was achieved, like if you watch this in widescreen, you'll see usually in the upper right or left corners of the widescreen frame, there's kind of like a flashing occurring, like a little bit of flaring occurring. It's subtle.
And it's very small.
It's very small. And what that is, it's an assistant with a tiny pen light, just waving it into the lens and creating a flash. It's an assistant subliminally, emotionally adding an element to the frame. And I thought about what is this? And
even when you describe it, it sounds like a bigger effect.
It's a tiny effect. It's almost unnoticeable.
Like the size of a penny.
It is subliminal. It is subliminal. And I thought about what it was, and I realized, okay, it's a little tiny bit of flare. It's occurring in the early parts of the movie, and it's whenever Sonny is showing up and kind of chasing after Jed. And I realized it's the sun in his eyes. It's Sonny in Jed's eyes.
Oh, wow.
And then I started thinking about the name Sonny. And the fact that she's named Sonny, it's spelled Sonny.
Which seems like it should be spelled Sunny, all right?
It should be. And I think that's the thing, is she's actually bringing sun into his life.
Yes.
She's bringing light into his life. And they're literally hinting at that subliminally through this little pen light flare that they're doing. And then which is the kind of thing that you only do after you've made 30 movies. Because you're comfortable enough and your crew is comfortable enough. And you tell your crew, hey, when this is happening, and you leave it up to your assistants.
And then you got on top of that, you have a magnificent Morricone score with, I think, one of his most catchy and memorable, once you know it, theme songs.
Yeah, just like Sonny, which is another cue. They keep saying Sonny in the song when it's like a spirit calling to him, and it's almost like a mantra coming to him. Sonny.
Oh, constantly. And then just the use of the song the first time that Sonny and Jed actually see each other. I mean, that's just it's. What a sequence.
And another thing about
that whole opening 10 minutes is just
another thing about these assistants,
a masterclass in filmmaking.
These assistants, like how good they are, because they're using zoom lenses and they're using them like they're just like it's an extension of their own bodies. Because
oh my God, those zoom shots.
There will be this incredible.
You pointed out the one that I didn't even notice until
they're like I think that was the one where she's on horseback or something.
They're riding on horseback in the rain and then
incredible.
The beginning of the corn sequence.
They're in the rain. The camera is moving. First of all, it's raining. So they're
and it looks like real rain. It doesn't look like a rain machine.
It's real rain.
Because everything is wet.
they come in. There's this long. It's a zoom that pulls out of them into a wide shot as they go into a barn, and then you realize, wait a minute, this zoom that was tight on their faces in a low light condition, which I mean, on film in the rain, like everything about it makes it more difficult.
Yeah.
You know, in the middle of all of this, they're actually doing this long dolly move at the same time, and zooming out and then elegantly panning
to this big house
as they go in to this big house, and then zooming into the window where we see Telly Savalas.
Where we recognize that's Telly Savalas in the window, and then it makes a match cut right into
unreal, like unbelievable skill to do that, and you don't notice it because you're not paying attention to like the skill of the operators necessarily, because but these guys are the best.
And the last thing that needs to be said that we haven't said, all right, is to talk about the Telly Savalas character in the film, who is what the film presents as its antagonist.
Who is, in a weird way, the closest thing to a hero in the movie.
Well, that had always been
he's the hero of his own movie,
sure. That's always been my reading of
and he's the hero of the box there.
That's because it's a crass video company that doesn't know who the fuck Thomas Millian is. Telly Savalas gives a fantastic performance, and his look in that big fur coat that he wears is just like, you can't, it's one of the most undeniable, along with Sonny's buffalo coat. All right. It's one of these most undeniable images that just stays with you. But you figure he's a lawman who's after Jed Tragato, and he's got a group of deputies with him, and he's after him for obviously some personal reason. And that movie goes on for the first half, and you just never quite know why.
Yeah, he's almost like a Pinkerton, the way he's going after him.
Yeah, you figure he's like some big deal fucking marshal, all right, or he's some Pinkerton guy.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to reveal what the deal is, all right? But mid-movie, Jed tells a story about how the first time he killed somebody, because Sonny ended up killing somebody, and it's weighing on her. She can't quite get over it. And he goes, well, like, I was lucky, and Jed tells, hey, get over it. That guy would have fucking killed you. Don't even worry about it. Now, I had it a little easier. The first time I killed somebody, I killed 12 people. And you can't feel for 12 what you feel for one. Spoken like Corbucci.
Yeah.
Spoken like a guy who lived under fascism.
Yeah. Spoken like somebody who's seen the harder realities of the world.
Absolutely. And then he proceeds to tell this amazing story about what happened that ends up working into why Telly Savalas' character Francisco is after him. Yeah. And it's
relentlessly after him.
And it's an amazing story. Now, if you're as well versed in Corbucci's oeuvre as I am, a case could be made, one, because of how loathsome Thomas Millian presents himself through most of the movie, and the whole Charles Manson aspect, and the fact that they're presented as like hippie counterculture figures, and it's obvious that Corbucci has nothing but contempt.
Oh, he hates them.
Has nothing but contempt for hippie counterculture figures that is already established in his Johnny Halliday movie, The Specialist. Yeah. That's already known. That's known about him. That Telly Savalas' character Francisco's arc is very similar to the Avengers in other Corbucci movies. He is a man who is possessed with revenge over somebody. He has a right for that revenge. When you actually learn what happened, you can understand why he wants to kill Jed Tragato. And like some other Corbucci's characters, Joseph Cotton's character in Hellbenders and Burt Reynolds' character in Navajo Joe, he's so thirsty for revenge, he's slightly gone mad.
Yeah.
It's
unbalanced him almost.
Yeah, his thirst for revenge has driven him mad.
Yeah.
I think there is an alternative reading to be had where Corbucci is fucking with how he gives the story, that he's actually presenting his villains as the protagonist. But the real hero, where he's coming from, is Francisco. Now, that was always my reading before, but partly because I only like the movie so much. Now watching it this time, I think you can still go with that rating, but that seems more like a fanciful reading. Now I actually do look at Sonny and Jed as the heroes.
Yeah. I mean, they're the heroes in this world.
But I do not look at Francisco as the bad guy. I think he's an Avenger.
He's not. In fact, you can only respect him because no matter what happens to him, he's blinded.
Yeah.
If I can say that.
Yeah, I think
he's blinded in the movie, and he won't stop. He might have a gun in his face, and he's got a blind man's cane that he's clacking in front of him to get to his mark.
Well, that's the thing that truly makes him a Corbucci hero, is because part of the thing about Corbucci's characters is they always have like a comic book, almost superhero prowess that puts them above the other characters. Either it's because how fast they are with a gun, or in the case of Navajo Joe, his blitzkrieg fighting style. They always have something that gives them almost a superhero panache that none of the other characters can beat them. But a thing that happens in quite a few of the movies, it happens in Django, it happens in The Specialist, and it happens in El Grande Silencio, is the very aspect that always gives them an edge over the other characters is robbed from them in the final act. And so the edge, the prowess that they have that has made them win throughout the entire movie is now stolen from them. And that's almost what makes them heroes for the first time in the movie. And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't in a Corbucci movie. But that's exactly what happens to Telly Savalas. When he's blinded, he still goes off and has a showdown, a face down with Sonny and Jed, robbed of his eyesight.
Yeah.
The most extreme fucking example of a Corbucci Avenger.